Hello everybody, welcome back. Now, there's a video that quite a few British reaction channels seem to be, well, reacting to. And I thought that I would have a crack at it and give my perspective on it. It's, could the US military conquer the UK if it wanted to, 2019? Bit of an old one. Is there an updated version of this? Because if there is, I'd like to see it. But whether it's from 2019 or now, I'm not delusional. I'm definitely patriotic. My politics aren't exactly a mystery, seeing as I put a post on my community tab endorsing Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. But regardless of that, I know that the US could destroy us if they wanted to. Most countries could at the moment, because defence is one of the most underfunded parts of the British budget. The biggest expense at the moment for the last few years has been the NHS. Or at least, it's the one that's received the biggest increase in funding over the last few years. If you look at the statistics, every year it's just been given more and more money. You know, people that say the NHS is underfunded, it's not. If you actually look at the numbers, it's just gone up and up and up. More and more money every year. And it doesn't make a difference. Anyway, that's not what we're here to see. This is about military and, yeah. So, I'm interested to see how this video is going to break it down. So, let's check it out.
US and UK are close allies, and that US armed might is far greater than that of UK. But just for argument's sake, and to learn what sort of limitations waging warfare across the ocean implies, this video will explore US invading the United Kingdom. So, with just the airplanes and ships left to count on, is an invasion over the Atlantic viable?
Добро пожаловать в штаб-квартире Бинков.
Welcome to Binkov's HQ. You know, not many War of the Day complete on a bird for and
I
fight.
hate channels who have these stupid Clash of Clans adverts on them from like 5 years ago. Sick of seeing that fucking game back then.
Like invade UK's base.
I bet it were a shit game as well. It looked shit.
And now, could US military successfully invade UK if it wanted to?
Duh.
Some rules will apply. US gets no overseas bases, and all other countries are impassable. Distance from US to UK mainland is pretty big, especially when reaching London. Before trying to land any troops, the seas must first be clear of British ships, and Royal Air Force must be suppressed. US has a massive advantage when it comes to naval assets. Basically, all of its assets are made for oceans and could operate near UK if needed, while the Americans would need to.
I remember a couple of years ago, it might be more than that, it was announced on the news, brand new British military ship was unveiled. It cost billions. I think it was the first time we'd built a brand new, like, destroyer or whatever it was for years. And they made a big song and dance about it, but it was just one.
To sail to and from Britain, taking weeks away from their actual presence, US Navy could pretty much do whatever it pleases near the UK. It's interesting to point out that most of US ships do not carry anti-ship missiles. US Navy prefers to use their carriers for such missions. British Royal Navy is to go down a similar route. Their Harpoon missiles are old and set to be retired soon. Not all ships have them. Only a minor part of the British fleet has modern air defense systems. Basically, the sea war would be fought above the sea and under it, but the British lacked anti-ship missiles for its aircraft. Furthermore, British Tornado aircraft ceased to train for the anti-ship missions almost 2 decades ago. Basically,
That's just so frustrating to me. You turn the clock back 100 years, even 50, our Navy was unstoppable.
if UK had to try and do air raids against US fleet, it would be down to 2 weapons: laser-guided bombs and short-range tactical missiles. Brimstone in particular might be the weapon of choice. While its warhead is tiny, Brimstone 2 has a decent range. Still, against dozens of potent destroyers designed to deal with many anti-ship missiles at once, it's unlikely UK could do much. British best bet would be their submarines. They're fairly modern. Theoretically, the British could use their ballistic missile subs as attack subs as well.
11 subs. Oh, wow, yeah, we're fine.
And speed up the entry into service of another astute sub, while keeping one Trafalgar running a bit longer, rummaging
And the thing is, this is from 5 years ago. It'll be even worse now, because don't forget, we've given everything to fucking Ukraine.
retired
And Israel. Why did we get involved? What has it got to do with us?
sailors to crew it. Still, the British would be far outnumbered. US submarine fleet dwarfs theirs. Given a bit less time on station and British home advantage when it comes to resupply, the balance of power may not be quite 6-1. Still, it's no question the British subs would get hunted down within months. Aerial anti-submarine platforms would also play a large role.
That's generous.
And while the British could use all their assets, even just the deployable portion of US assets would be enough to force the British subs
Look at that, even helicopters, they're one of the cheapest aerial vehicles in any military. We've only got 41 of them as well. America have got 460 Seahawk helicopters.
hiding. Furthermore, US carrier-based air power would make it hard for British anti-sub helicopters to operate. The main force projection would be done by US carriers, naturally. US could choose whether to use more carriers initially and then have less available later on, or to maintain a smaller number on constant patrol. To defeat the British Air Force, the former is more likely. US nominally has 11 carriers, but only 9 air wings. It does have an additional support wing, which is a lot bigger. It may be the source of 1 or 2 more combat wings after some months of preparation. But crews aren't the only issue. Lifespan of a carrier necessarily involves lengthy maintenance periods. Important to note is that the deployable period doesn't mean the carrier can actually be on a mission the whole time. Usually 1 or 2 deployments are made during those 18 months. Missions are usually 6 to 8 months long, and several months are needed to prep the carrier and its wing for another mission. Shorter missions might give more deployments in the short term, but in the long term they would require even more maintenance for every month spent out at sea. Because of all that, it's unrealistic US would send out more than 6 carriers at once, after a few months of prep time. Similar issues would affect the aviation assault ships. Perhaps 4 to 6 could be deployed at once, after some preparations. Grand total of combat planes US Navy and Marine Corps could muster in a few months long.
So the US was still using our Harriers at this point. That's interesting. But then we started using their F-35s, didn't we? See, that's another example. From World War II onwards, we had the Spitfire, we had the Harrier, we had the Tornado. The 3 best fighter jets over the time period that they were, conceptualized, built, and put into active service. And now we just rely on America for his fighter jets. We don't build our own anymore. It's just...
air campaign is thus smaller than the total number of US planes. US might fly in fresh planes.
Look, 140 Eurofighters, that's French. F-35, that's American. Tornado. I'm pretty sure all the Tornadoes are gone now as well. Too old. There's a former Tornado pilot who appears on my favourite podcast, Lotus Eaters podcast. He used to fly them, and I'm pretty sure he said that they've all gone now. And the Eurofighters are on the way out as well. I'm pretty sure he said that. So all we've got left is the F-35s. So, yeah. Never mind could America conquer us at this point. Fucking Spain could probably have a good go at us, a good crack at us at this point. Or Cyprus. Or Greece. It's ridiculous.
To replace ones that got lost. Flying them over the ocean to a carrier would be doable. What could the British respond with? Royal Air Force is smaller than even the readily available US planes deployed on carriers. Another huge issue for the British would be their lack of air defenses. Everything they currently have are fairly low altitude systems, meaning the US would be free to bomb them from high.
And we've got no air defences at all. You know, like Israel has the Iron Dome. We have nothing like that. Closest thing we've got to anything like that is basically what we had in World War II. We've got radar around the whole circumference of the country that tracks incoming airplanes and missiles. And if something pops up that's a cause for concern, they scramble a fighter jet from the base that's closest to the location that it's approaching, and then they fly out to intercept it. If it's a plane, talk to them, or if it's a missile, try and shoot. That's all we've got. Nothing immediate. Nothing that as soon as it's spotted and identified as a missile, they can launch something at it and shoot it down. Nothing. You have to get an RAF pilot to get out of his chair, into his uniform. Well, he'd probably already be in his uniform, but, you know, stand up, run to the plane, get in it, start it up, taxi, take off, intercept. Oh, I could go on forever about it.
High up with
It's just decline. I hate my country.
guided weapons. UK would also suffer the US cruise missile barrage. While the Brits have some such missiles of their own, it's unlikely they would be used against the faraway US bases. Even the subs that could carry them would be better utilized for defense of the
Not
homeland.
even the difference in range. It's
While not all could be launched at once, US could sustain the effort. The British Air Force would be mostly paralyzed on the ground. US has also a much bigger recon platform fleet, especially when it comes to satellites.
a few working small prototypes or commercial satellites, whereas the Americans, 7 radar, 14 optical, 6, 20...
British lack those, as in the real world they timeshare some US spy
This fucking country.
satellites. US aircraft would be looking for targets as well. Britain would have no real means of scouting the US bases. US AWACS type planes would be plentiful, while British ones would mostly be trapped on the ground, with runways and highways being mostly inoperative. Thus the Royal Air Force would slowly get destroyed on the ground. When they would be able to get some planes airborne, they still may not choose to engage the Americans, as it's likely US attack waves would be made of close to 100 planes with possibly as many fighters as Britain would muster per each local interception, or more. The best Britain could hope for would be a
Isn't it ironic as well how pathetic our air defence is? We invented the concept of air defence. We invented it during World War II. You know, that big fucking massive radar on the hill that used to track the German air raids. That was us. We were the first to create a working system like that. And now...
roughly equal kill ratio in the air. And when the losses on the ground are included over months of a protracted bombing campaign, US would still be left with a sizable force.
Look, the losses for the UK, there's no, complacency or whatever the word is, but America, probably 100 planes lost. They wouldn't even lose that many.
All this didn't even include the US Air Force. While the scenario requires it to use the bases inside the US, Britain could be reached. At first, bombers would be deploying cruise missiles, but later on they would be likely used for bombing missions. But could the Air Force tactical plane fleet help out as well? With very ample in-flight refueling, the answer is yes. US operates the world's biggest air tanker fleet. The Hercules-based tankers, however, are too small and would use most of the fuel just to get near Britain. Still, the remainder of the fleet has a substantial fuel offload capacity, and tankers could refuel each other. Such ops may sound complex, but compared to what the British did in Falklands War, they're fairly basic. The British used a dozen tankers to refuel themselves repeatedly, keeping the bomber refueled throughout all of the route. While all of the
The Vulcan bomber.
tanker fleet would not be available due to maintenance, the rest could still offload significant fuel loads just outside Britain if needed. With several refuelings per plane, US Air Force could still expect to have around 400 combat planes in action practically every day. The British would really have no chance in the air. Within months, the US would have complete control of the air. And thus the second phase of the invasion might commence. By that time, British ships would be mostly dead, even if they hugged the shores and just aided in the air defenses. British submarines might hold out a bit longer, if not being used to actively hunt down US ships. But even if British subs managed to kill 2 US vessels for each of their own, final result would be the end of the Royal Navy. So at around 6 months or so into the war, the landings would be mostly unopposed, except for the Royal Army defending the shores. 6 months would be enough for the US to assemble pretty much all
reserve, active,
of their active and reserve assets. In addition to landing ships, US could count on numerous cargo assets of its Sea Lift Command and Reserve Fleet in case a port is secured. US Airborne could also help, with the numbers shown probably growing with newly trained paratroopers. Getting additional heavier equipment for them, however, would not be likely, given the time limit. US transport plane fleet is pretty big, and should be able to drop all the airborne troops within days. US could be looking at close to 30,000 troops during the first day, and close to 20,000 more the day after. Subsequent days would see fewer and fewer troops being added, and more supplies being brought in. The British would enjoy more soldiers than shown before. The reserve mentioned covers only the soldiers receiving some training periodically, and soldiers for whom some heavy equipment is stored. In an event of a total war, Britain would be using those 6 months to mobilize as many soldiers as possible. While they would be equipped with basically just rifles, and while their training would be less than adequate, they would still boost the overall numbers several times. Yet all those soldiers may not be enough.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. This country could go to war tomorrow, and they could start a conscription drive and whatever. It wouldn't be like that. I'm telling you now, the average fighting age, homogeneous British person in this country does not want to fight for this country. I don't. And I'm telling you now, the majority of people, men my age, don't want to either. Why would you want to fight and risk your life for a country that hates you? In the last however many years saying, you're the enemy. You're at fault for this country's ills, that country's ills. You know, you're responsible for this by your lineage. Yeah. Look at the poll. They did a poll on the thing that the Tories said they're going to do if they win the election. If they win the election. Yeah. But they said they're going to bring in conscription. You know, the only age group in the UK that's in favour of that is the over 65s. Because that's the old attitude, isn't it? Send the young off to fight in wars and die. But every other age group is against it. Nobody wants to fight for this country. There's no faith in it at all. Everyone's had enough. There's just... what's left to fight for?
As UK has a problem of geography. Its landmass is just too large. Its coastline is very long. Even when taking just the western part of its coastline into account, the area to be defended is huge. And what about the islands? Perfect for US to take and entrench themselves at, before launching further landings from them. Most of those areas are sufficiently far away from the mainland that British artillery would not be much of a factor. And what about Northern Ireland? There are just too many places for US to concentrate its assault on. The British would not be able to move their forces around easily and protect those islands or the Northern Ireland. So the islands would fall one by one, then either Northern Ireland would be taken or part of Great Britain would fall. Hard to traverse overland Scotland would be an obvious choice, though that would also slow down US breakthrough as well later on. Cornwall or Devon are also decent picks, as British defenders lack room to swoop down on the US beachhead from all directions. Though such areas would likely be more heavily populated by British military to begin with. Once the US manages to secure ports and airfields and brings in US Army reinforcements, it would be basically game over for the British. US would build up its helicopter force on the areas it has taken, which is considerable.
Look at To us, 203 transport utility helicopters and rotorcrafts versus America with 3,000. 3,500 troops for us, America 45,000. I know America's a massive country, it's bigger than Europe, yeah, but still, it's not about the size of the country, it's what that country stands for and what it means. This was the richest country in the world not so long ago, the most successful, the most productive, the most sought after place to work, to start a business in, to live in. It was just the best country in the world. It's not about how big your country is, it's what you're defending that should determine the size and the efficacy of your military. And, you know, I mean, I know that there's nothing worth defending anymore here, so maybe our puny military is reflective of that, but it's still a living memory. The size of the operation, World War II, and all there was since. You know, look at Afghanistan. How many vehicles got sent over there? Thousands of warthogs and what was the big one? The tracks. The warthog was the Mastiff. Mind you, that was American made, but still they sent thousands of them over. And the Camp Bastion, it was the same size as it was the same size as a major English city. Is it Coventry or something? It was massive. It had a Burger King, it had McDonald's. It was a fully operational town, just full of equipment. And then when we left everything, billions of pounds worth of equipment, British military equipment. So it's not like, you know, a guerrilla army, like the Afghan army. It wasn't a few AK-47s and a few Toyota flatbed trucks with a sentry gun on the back with no armour. It was top of the line, expensive military equipment. And we just left it all.
While the British have a fleet of their own to help quickly distribute its forces where needed, their numbers are small. Both sides would of course be losing many helicopters, US to British low-level air defenses and British to US fighter cover, which would continuously be flying over the important areas. The British would have only a small part of shown inventory of heavy weapons present at any one point the US attacks. While US would also not be disembarking thousands of its Abrams tanks or 10,000 of other heavy combat vehicles, the overwhelming fire support coming from various directions would more than make up for it. Fire support from the ships may come in form of MLR units firing from the ships rather than actual gun barrage. US ships still lack long-range gun rounds. Attack helicopters are another way of concentrating force in one area quickly, but again the British are far outmatched, even if just half of US numbers are present. The issue for the Americans would be time. As the scenario asks what can be achieved within 1 year, US would be under pressure to progress from their multiple beachheads. Northern Ireland is likely to fall within the 1-year time limit, but only minor parts of the Great Britain would be overrun by the Americans during the same time period. The British would put up a hell of a fight. Ground troop loss ratio would favor the British somewhat.
Would we? Really? Would we? We'd put up
But when Air Force and Navy losses are added in, where Britain would suffer more heavily, the US would come out fine. With added large chunks of conquered territory, the US could call itself a victor. Big thanks goes to all my...
You're not advertising your Patreon on my channel, pal. Yeah, I mean, What about that was surprising or shocking? Nothing at all. Literally, you could name any country in Europe, probably, that'd have a good chance against us at this point. You know, when you factor in all of it, everything that I mentioned during this video, from when we pulled out of Afghanistan and left billions of pounds worth of equipment to handing over what little we had left to Ukraine. I mean, they're using our missiles to shoot the Russians. We're involved in that war fully now. They're using our weapons to fight Russia. That's not us fighting Russia by proxy. I don't know what is. Israel, what's going on there? We're giving them money or something, aren't we? We're giving them something. But when you factor all that in, I think any country in Europe that's got an active military funding program would have a good chance. If it was a non-nuclear war, most countries would have a chance. Even if it was nuclear, yeah, alright, there's a few countries that wouldn't. We've got, how many nuclear weapons? We haven't got many, but we've got a few dozen. But just a normal war, old-fashioned ground war, there's more countries in this world that would be in the fight and stand their ground against us than wouldn't. And if you said that, if you went back to even 1985, and said that to the average British person, especially someone who'd served, do you reckon in 39 years' time that basically any country in Europe could beat us in a ground war? They would probably just laugh at you. Should never got rid of the Empire. Shouldn't have started all this, we've got to pay for things that we... Yeah, I'm not going to get into it. But yeah, not surprised. It's not exactly a big brain moment, is it, to predict that the USA could beat the UK? Of course it could. Anybody could. But I thought I'd have a crack at it to see what it was about. I didn't really like the video, though. I thought it was going to be an American talking about it. Someone, who speaks clearly. I could barely understand what he was saying. But the things on the screen that showed the difference in size just... And this was 6 years ago. God, we're a fucking joke. If World War III starts, if Russia declares war or not, we're finished. It'll be over in a month. Honestly, the minute you hear it announced and declared, you need to get all your money together, everything, and leave. Don't stay. There's nothing left here for you, for any of us. Just get out, because this place will be fucking levelled in a year if it kicks off. I am telling you now, there is nothing in this... There's no plan. There's no equipment. No one's going to save us. Just leave. I am. Nothing left here for me. Anyway, yep, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'd say see you in the next one, but I don't think I can get through another video like this. It's just depressing. But, yeah. See what we're... Thanks for watching. See you next time. Good night.